ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. You either make excuses or you choose to level up. What amazing guests living the big ticket life. Woo! Woo! Brandon Britton here.
Appreciate you having me here today, man.
It's that kind of discernment, that kind of focus, that kind of forward thinking that's so important if you're going to succeed in business today.
Jeff and I are like friends. We're real friends.
We are like And so you unlock fortune and freedom without all the stress that normally comes along with it.
It all comes down to your why. Your business, why are you doing it? How is it going to change the world and what's it going to do for your family?
I want you to celebrate your success.
Talk about the struggle. But I promise you, the story is in your struggle.
They'll never be able to say that about me because people only see me working hard at anything that I'm doing whenever they see me.
Focus on your success and the success of those around you.
But being that constant in your community, good or bad, whether things are great in the community, bad in the community, who's steady?
Unapologetically do business and life on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. What amazing guests living the big ticket life. And we discuss how they do it and the big ticket methods they use. The things that make your life successful so you do life and business on your terms.
In and of itself, the only limitations that we really have on ourselves is the ones that we allow to be put on ourselves. And most people don't look at it in that perspective.
There's nothing wrong with being humble, but there's also nothing wrong with stepping into your superpower and letting people know who you are.
Get ready to do life and business on your terms. Truly live your big ticket life. All right. Got an amazing guest with me today, Doug Stewart. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Big Ticket Life. Happy to have you on, man. So Doug is a TEDx speaker, certified Dale Carnegie Coach and Instructor, book author of the great book, 5.5 Mentors, and a national account manager at Resident Home. I mean, is that not enough, Doug?
Just getting started.
A lot of things.
Just getting started.
That's right. So he uses, he's best known for utilizing original and adaptive methods to help people pursue a life of purpose through enthusiastic discoveries. Most importantly, Doug is a devoted husband to his best friend, Meredith, and proud father to Kendall and Kendrick. And if you want to connect with Doug, the man who's doing an awful lot of stuff, very cool, one of my first mentors in the mattress industry, connect with Doug at dougstewart919.com. So Doug, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you taking the time to be on here, man.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I feel bad I botched your intro. That was my bad. My mouse wasn't working.
You could have just said Doug and I would have been happy. It makes absolutely no difference to me.
Well, the intro's for the people. So, we got to,
Sure.
it gets them fired up, right?
Yeah.
I'm channeling my inner Chaz from Blades of Fury there. It's for the people.
Right.
Gets them fired up.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd just jump in with probably one of the most interesting, lasting things I ever heard you talk about was conflict, right? And how you love conflict and you get down on conflict. So I'm going to leave it there and let you explain what you mean about loving conflict.
Yeah. It's interesting. I wouldn't say that I hate conflict. What I love is the thing that conflict brings, and so for me, I make a distinction between what is conflict and what is an argument, right? An argument is when, two people draw a line in the sand and they're just talking at each other, right? But I think I've never met anyone who has had a deep, meaningful, lasting relationship that did not involve a significant amount of conflict. And so what the way I like to think of it is conflict is the price that we pay for healthy relationships. And part of that for me, Jeff, came from, the work that I've had to do with myself. It reminds me of when I first got married. Anytime that there was conflict, I would completely shut down, and it would drive my wife crazy. And it's not that I didn't want to engage and fix a problem. It's that I was paralyzed. I was paralyzed with fear. I was paralyzed with frustration. I was paralyzed because I didn't want to say or do anything that would be hurtful. So I just completely shut down. Later in life, as I've done my work and tried to figure myself out, I found that there was a particular disorder, a trauma-induced disorder that caused that. And so I've really worked through that and learned to really lean into what it means to have healthy conflict. And I'm still not good at it, but boy, do I really enjoy the positive outcomes that I get to have because I'm willing to engage in conflict with the people that I care about.
Yeah. You said that the difference between conflict and an argument. Conflict, you're looking for that outcome, that positive outcome. Argument, just kind of draw that line in the sand and start yelling at each other. It seems like we got an awful lot of that nowadays. Even with people that, we are friends with, that we love, that we care about, personal relationships, marriage, et cetera. So I've seen you teach to this on conflict. I think it was at least two-day events, I believe, where this was a big part of that time. So how do you, what would you say to somebody to recognize I think the first step is people just need to differentiate why they're approaching the conflict, and they almost immediately turn it into that argument. Is that, you said it came from trauma induced, and you don't need to get into all of that if you don't want to, but the way you shut down came from past trauma, right? Is that why people change this opportunity for positive outcome in conflict? Do they change it from that into this argument where they just have to be right?
Maybe. I mean, I think there's it's the fight or flight thing, right? There's some people that sort of run from it. There's other people that run to it and sort of overcompensate when it comes to conflict. I think it's always interesting to people when you say something like conflict is a skill. Like conflict is something you have to learn. And for me, one of the first things that I learned that was helpful is that any issue that you have with another person has nothing to do with you. It is never personal. There's nothing anyone can do that is personal to you. And the way you can sort of prove that out is to go hey, look, in this situation, if I took myself out of it and put someone else in this situation with that person that was just kind of like me, would that person have treated them or done the same thing to them? And the answer is probably yes. Right. Of course they would. And then the other part of that, once you're not taking it personal, is to recognize why other people are rude, hurtful, hateful, are willing to mistreat you, or willing to marginalize you. I don't believe in the concept of good or bad people. The way I think of it is there are only joyful people and miserable people, and joyful people do things that we would define as good, and miserable people do things we would define as bad. But it does not mean that they're a good or bad person. Typically, we do the same thing. I'm not quite my best self when I'm tired, when I'm hungry, when I'm frustrated, when I'm stressed, and when I'm miserable, I'm more likely to raise my voice at my kids, or snap at my wife, or be rude to some stranger, or to curse at the person that pulled out in front of me on the street, But when I'm joyful, I'm much more likely to overlook those things. And so I have to, if I want to give that sort of grace to myself and self-awareness to myself, I also have to give it to other people.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a refreshing way to look at the issue of conflict, especially as it sits today. I read something 2-3 weeks ago about, how people respond to everyday things in their life. And one of those is when you're driving if you over respond to that person who cuts you off, or that person that's, driving slow in the left lane, like, so many people take that out, and, myself included, and then I read this, I'm like, this is really smart. And what the person said is, that person didn't arrive in your day just for you. They're just going through their own day. Maybe that person driving slow in the left lane, maybe they just lost a loved one. Maybe they just got fired from their job. Maybe, maybe they're going to pick their kid up at school, and it's an issue that's been ongoing, and they thought it was resolved, and now it's not. So now they're back in a problem again. And I love how you said, if you replace that person, which is really, for the driving analogy, is kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that person is not set out to interrupt you in that day.
No.
So is it really that conflict, and the way we handle it arrives from almost that position of selfishness? Like, I have to win this argument. I have to win this moment.
I think, well, for sure, I think some of it is winning. The other part is maybe more about just being right. It's not that I have to win. I just have to prove out that I'm right and you're wrong. Like, okay, so here's an example from when I was in retail. We make judgments all the time. And when we make judgments, psychologically, we will do what it takes to make that judgment true. Even if it's to our detriment, just this is sort of a weird human psychological dysfunction, a lot of times. And so the way I think about it, and actually, I think I wrote about this in the book, is the only cure for judgment is curiosity. And those two things can't ever exist in the same place at the same time. So either you've made a judgment, which means you've made a static decision about who someone is or what something is, or you leave a little bit of space for you to be wrong and have a little curiosity as to why this is happening, what's going on. And when someone is mistreating me or is rude to me, it does me no good to give a sick person poison, right? So if they're miserable, don't give them the thing that makes them more miserable. Instead, recognize what it is for what it is. And then, one of my mantras, Jeff, is that I will be the person I've decided to be, regardless of who I'm standing in front of, right? So whether you're mistreating me or whether you're kind to me, it's my commitment to myself, not to other people, but to myself, that I'm going to be the person that I've decided to be. I'm not always perfect. I'm not good at that all the time, but that's where I strive. The example that I was going to give, when I own my family business, I hired this lady to be a salesperson, and I thought she was going to be really good. She didn't have a ton of sales experience, but she was one of those people that you look at and just go, man, who couldn't like her? Who couldn't like her personality? She was assertive. She wanted to do well. Her first day of work, she was 10 minutes late. And I grew up, my mom was classically late for everything. And if I have a pet peeve, man, it's being late. And so she's late 10 minutes the first day. And I'm like, okay, maybe there's a reason. I'm not going to sweat it. Second day comes, 10 minutes late. Now I'm starting to get angry. Third day comes, she's 20 minutes late. And I'm at the end of my rope. So she comes in and I just go, look, I'm sorry. This isn't something that's working. I have to let you go. And she burst out into tears right in my office. And she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then she shares with me that the reason she needed a job was less than 3 months ago, her husband had unexpectedly walked out on her and her 3 kids. She had been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years, and she was trying to figure out how she was going to support her kids, keep her house, have a career with no support, no experience, no background, and had given herself and sacrificed her career and herself in a lot of ways to be a stay-at-home mom to her kids, and trusted that her husband had some semblance of integrity and was going to hold up his end of the bargain. And I was so ashamed of myself for not having some curiosity about why she was late, and instead making the judgment that she was just late, and that is a non-negotiable for me. And I'll never forget that moment. And I hired her back. So she was only unemployed for about 15 minutes.
Right.
I hired her back, and
Unemployed for 15 minutes, and Doug got one of the most foundational contributory life lessons that you're going to carry on forever.
Man, I swore to myself that I would never make a decision about another person without a conversation ever again. And I've tried my best to uphold that, but that was really a defining moment in my life as an adult, as a business owner, as a father, as a husband. You know, it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, what you just said there, never make a judgment on a person without a conversation. I'll repeat it again, so you hear it a third time if you're listening. I hope you picked up on it the first time, second time, third time. Never make a judgment on somebody without that conversation. I mean, really, that's just a deeper, more connected, profound example of my car driving example.
Right.
It's really what it is. Like, that person, they were doing their damnedest to be there. So what was just out of curiosity, what was the resolution? Did you adjust the schedule back so that she could attend like morning routine for the kids?
Yeah, it turned into hey, I know you're doing the best you can, so get here as soon as you can. Easy as that. It was easy as that. Because once I knew what she was up against, then the question is, okay, so how do you support your people? And for me, that support looked like, okay, so who in my network can I reach out to connect her to, so that perhaps she could get childcare, right?
Yeah.
How,
and that's what leaders do.
Yeah. And, it was a matter of one call. The church that I was involved in, had a program for single moms. And it was a beautiful thing to watch her be able to get a little bit of community without feeling as if she was a recipient of charity, like she was, somebody that people felt sorry for, right? She wanted to make her own way. She wanted to feel as if she could have the dignity of someone that was doing the work. And, that's what she did, and so it's important to not make judgments until you've had a conversation. And one thing, Jeff, I would add to that is one of the rules we have in our house, is that you are not allowed to be resentful toward anyone if you do not have the courage to address it. And so you can be resentful, but it has to be on the other side of a conversation. And boy, has that served me, because what I've realized is like, oh man, I don't want to face this. I don't want to have this conversation. And as I think about how I'm going to have it, how I'm going to start this conversation with this thing that's irritated me or been hurtful or whatever, oftentimes I realize it's not that big of a deal. And so I go, okay, then I'm just going to choose not to be angry about that. But the things I can't let go of, it's like, okay, if I'm going to be resentful, I've got to have the conversation. And that's where the conflict thing comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that about having that conversation first before you fall on the sword of the outcome of the judgment.
Right. We can't be the hero and the victim at the same time. You got to pick one.
Oh, you just hit me with another one, man. I kind of, truth be told, man, I got little goosebumps. Truth be told, that was another one you hit us with years back. And I think that was in Nashville. And
maybe,
And so let's talk more about that. I mean, the hero and the victim. I mean, that's, I really hope people are digging this. By the way, through my retail podcast, I made a new connection to Steve. Steve Goebel is an avid reader, business coach as well. And he picked up your book, 5.5 Mentors, just the other day. So just as a little, there's no thing called a shameless plug around here. I'm happy to plug all the great stuff my guests are doing. So where do you go get the book? Is it on Amazon? I know we flashed something on the screen earlier.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes people catch this on the audio, so they don't get to see what's on the screen. So I always like to try to remember we share some love for those folks too listening.
Sure.
So yeah, Amazon 5.5 Mentors, Doug Stewart. So yeah, great book. But so let's dig into examples of taking the hero and victim position at the same time.
Yeah, I think this is a trap that I've fallen into quite a bit. I wish I could say that I learned this from observing other people or reading or some other way, but most of my learning in this area has been because I've been wrong and life has sort of punched me in the mouth. And so it's easy for us to say, I didn't have a choice. This person like took advantage or hurt me or came after me, and so we take sort of this victim position, so that we can be absolved of any of our responsibility in the issue, or we take the hero thing, and that's kind of like having some moral superiority, let's say, to go like, I'm superior to them because I was willing to address it and have conflict and have the conversation, and so I have found that anytime that I take a bit of an assessment when I'm in some sort of a conflict or disagreement with someone, the question is which one of those am I being? If I'm being both, that's the worst case scenario, because that means I believe I'm better than or morally superior to that person, and I'm a victim and don't have any power to make any change. And so my question that I try to ask myself is, what is my responsibility? You know? And so if you take responsibility and break up into two words, it's responsibility. So what is my ability to respond to this situation? It might not fix it. It might not make it go away, but what is it that I can do? So sometimes that's intellectual exercise to go like, okay, so is this something that really matters? Okay, maybe they disrespected me, but does it really matter? Is it worth the pain, trouble, turmoil, frustration that it's going to cause me? Or is it better to just go, this isn't that big of a deal. It's not personal. This person would have done that to anyone. In fact, they have a history of doing these sorts of things to other people. Okay, so now I know this, and I won't put myself in a position to do that again. That means that I'm not the victim. I'm not necessarily the hero, but I'm the person that is willing to respond with the best of my ability to this situation, to either mitigate it, improve upon it, or maybe in some cases even change it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, so often I think we, as leaders, we kind of take those actions people do and internalize it as this massive level of disrespect. You're violating, the things we do around here, which really, I think as we, weave through our conversation, the failure in leadership is we don't properly communicate what those things are we do around here.
Right.
Like that's one thing I'm working with my team at the store on is our mission, which is to change the way our customers feel about mattress stores.
Yeah.
Very simple mission, right? And this show, we're not going to necessarily go down the line of mattress retail in this episode because it's not what it's about, but it's just Doug and I are both connected to the industry, but we both do other things. But our mission is to change the way customers feel about mattress stores. I think when you think about that statement very simply, it guides everything we do, how we talk to people, how we greet you, how we take your money, how we, when I say take your money, how we find the right fit and prescribe the right thing, and how we deliver and how we treat when you're in our home. I mean, I tell people when I'm at like big type conference events and you got to pass the mic and do the intro, I say, I do business in your bedroom. Right. And that kind of gets everybody laughing. They snap their neck and they start paying attention. And I say, well, I own a retail mattress store, but I literally do business in people's bedrooms. And I respect that so much because I challenge people to think I challenge my team and everybody else involved. Like, we do business in people's private, personal bedrooms. Right. Two strange guys knocking on the door, walking in. Like, you don't have your friends and family in your bedroom, And so that mission to change the way you feel about stores really is communicative to our team Because, and then we have, principles and values behind that to better define it. But so many leaders fail to communicate that.
Yep.
And I think that frustration when they feel disrespected, would it be fair to say, Doug, and I'll get your input, is that almost like that fight flight response of, wait, I'm failing as a leader in not guiding my team, not leading my team properly. So now I have to lash out because of my issues, my own nonsense. Is that a fair statement, you think?
Yeah, I think so, man. I think for sure, and perhaps a variation of that would be that it's not uncommon for people to have a misplaced understanding of what it means to be a leader. It's a lot of times leadership is confused with dictatorship. It's like, when and look, it happens, right? It happens where
this is my kingdom. I have created it, and you will be a part of it.
Right. And the qualifier for you to listen to me or do what I say is more of a power hierarchy than it is about respect and relationship. And, people have too many options to stay in that. And, the saying that people don't leave companies, they leave managers, that's true. That's a saying because it's real, and
yep.
the problem with people, let's say, leading or managing with an iron fist, is that the biggest problem with it is that it works. Like it absolutely works. Like fear is an effective motivational tactic for sure.
Yep.
That's the bad news, man, is because people do it because it works. You
right.
can, that's why, we still have like dictatorships in our world. But the problem with that for people that participate in that kind of management is the second, and we see this in like political dictatorships as well across the world, is the second that the people have the ability, they overthrow.
Right.
Right. And if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yep.
Right. And so if you lead that way, the good news is that it'll work. The bad news is it's not sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as a leader, I've ebbed and flowed. I've always been curious. I've always wanted the right outcome, not necessarily my plan or idea.
Right.
I've certainly fought hard for them, until proven otherwise.
Right.
Like one of the biggest failures was, and it wasn't even so much a failure as it was, Jeff did his typical thing where he climbs the top of the high dive, jumps off, and in this case, didn't even fill the pool on the way down, said, oh, wait, the hose isn't connected to the faucet.
Right.
Dang it. And that was introducing a line of sleep-related CBD products into the mix without really understanding and asking a simple question and having a moment of curiosity to say, hey, I wonder how banking and your credit card processor and Google feel about this. Because they very quickly, within 48 hours of launch, said, no way, not happening. So that was one of those things as a leader, you're like, I'm doing this, we're doing this. And I was so impassioned by it that, no one really kind of felt compelled to say, hey, maybe we need to slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
And that wasn't so much a dictatorship example as it was where I'm just so bought in on the idea.
Right.
I spend time on Reddit, and one of the subreddits I picked up lately is anti-work. And I read it because I see some of the terribleness of leadership there. And it really I try to use it as a guidepost to test myself. Like, am I operating this way? Am I leading this way? Because I want my people to grow. I truly do. One of the things that I'm working on right now, we have a fantastic delivery driver named Kelvin. And he's going to leave us. We hired him with him stating that. Because he's got a dream to have a travel photography business.
Wow.
That's his dream. And we've done things to bring that dream into our business to help that. But I'm going to lose the kid
Mm-hmm.
at some point. I say kid because he's like, 20, 18 years younger than me. But my challenge is to keep him, but not kill the kid. Does that make
Right.
sense?
100%.
Like you say, people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And that kind of hit me, like they do, but they also get enamored with a bigger goal somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And here this person's communicated their goals. One of my proudest moments of a business owner is a former employee, John, that because his career prior to us was just menial, like kind of dollar for hour labor task,
Sure.
right? So we brought him in where he was, elevated him up through our system. And now he's running basically an entire sales force for a very large, printer, print on demand,
Wow.
print fulfillment, signage, local company, and just rocking it.
Mm.
And that company could give him, as a bigger company, what our company couldn't. That's like one of my proudest moments because I was able to bring that person along.
Yeah.
So I think that theme, like, let's pick up on there. Like, what are your thoughts of helping to bring people along?
It reminds me. So I've been really fortunate to do quite a bit of executive one-on-one coaching in my career.
Right. And that's kind of like one of your core focuses.
Yeah. And it's something I've always enjoyed doing. It's not one of those things, especially when I first started, I realized pretty quickly it's not an incredibly it's not an easily scalable business model. It sort of has to be one of those incremental things, and for various reasons. But I every single sort of discovery conversation I've had around executive coaching, I would always have the discussion with whoever was writing the check. Normally it was their skip level or their superior that would go, hey, look, we want to invest in this person and help. We want to allow them to have one-on-one coaching so that they can get from where they are to where we think their potential is. And I would always say to them, before we start and before we do the discovery and really understand what the scope of work here is, are you comfortable with the fact that there is a probability that this person, as a result of coaching, will leave your organization? And you will pay for them to have the insight that will cause them to leave. And a lot of people would say no. And it would end the conversation right there. And then
Right.
some people would say yes, and then some people would ask, like, what the hell are you talking about?
Which kind of circles back to, like, you're almost creating a moment of conflict right there in your own sales pitch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, expectations require conflict.
Right.
And so I can remember the last person I coached. This was during quarantine. I had a CEO reach out to me and ask. He said, I want to be able to elevate one of my executive vice presidents to the C-suite, but there's some things that I'd like to see him improve upon first. So we did the scope of work. He agreed that this person might have some awareness or something that would cause him to leave the company as a part of the coaching, because I'm focusing on that person's development, not on the business outcome necessarily. The business outcome is a result of the growth of the individual. And
Right.
so that particular person in our coaching conversations realized that what he was doing wasn't necessarily what he was most passionate about. And there was a day that the CEO texted me and said, hey, do you have 15 minutes? And I said yes. And he called me and he goes, I just wanted to let you know that, let's call him James. I just want to let you know that James resigned today. And my first thought was, whoa, because sometimes even though people agreed to the expectation in the beginning, when that
Right.
thing happens, it still can create some drama, right? And I said, oh gosh, I'm sorry to hear that, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that yet. And I said, so where did he go? And he said, well, that's what I want to talk to you about. He said, because he just got a job that is perfect for him. That's his dream job. And he ended up at a very, 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 one of the largest companies in the world, which I'll to protect his privacy, it'll remain nameless.
Sure.
But it was a change for him that changed his entire life. And the CEO said to me, this is a huge loss for our organization, a huge gain for him personally. And I can't thank you enough.
There you go. That's what I was hoping was the outcome. That's awesome.
And that's leadership. That is leadership.
Amen. Yep.
It's nothing that I did. In fact, I hurt at least in the short term, it hurt the company, because they have this high potential that they had a vision to be here. But he learned that he would be happier, more effective. He would be closer, be able to be closer to his, his family. He'd have maybe perhaps even a little more flexibility in his work. Everything gets better. And it opens space for then that CEO to find and identify the right person that is also going to leave later. You mentioned this young man that's going to leave. Well, the truth is everyone is going to leave at some point. The question is how will they leave? Will they leave better or will they leave worse? Will they leave because you've equipped and inspired them, or will they leave because you have damaged or tried? One of the things in the leadership and management trainings that I've done in the past is I tell managers that when you take a new role and you acquire a new team, it really their reception of you has very little to do with you, because they are comparing you and they have to have some sort of benchmark, and the benchmark that they're using is their last manager. And so if that experience with that last manager was positive, they're probably going to give you the benefit of the doubt. It's going to be easier. Yeah. But if their last experience was awful, then you have to overcome the behavior of that last person. And that can be hard to, and that goes back to not taking things personal, right? To go, okay, so tell me a little bit, explain to me your experience with your last leader. Who was the best leader you've ever worked for? Who was the worst leader you've ever worked for? And getting a sense of who they are, how they are, and what is the best way that you can communicate with this person, lead this person, and ultimately help them, because they will leave. You will leave. My grandfather used to say that, there's this saying that this too shall pass. My grandfather used to say, it will pass or you will pass. Either way, things are going to change. Having that perspective as a leader, I think is imperative.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what you just shared there about asking, again, this is a pretty powerful episode if you're paying attention. Right. And what you just shared about asking about prior leadership, how that person engaged and responded, what they took, positive and negative. Yes, there are DISC and Colby tests all out there. And I know some people fall all over that and go for it. I think it's a barometer. I don't think it's a 100% thing.
Starting point.
Right. But those questions right there, because you can manipulate those, right? You could do back in high school, I did the CAB thing for multiple choice CAB, right? Kevin Hart, he has a joke. He did the abacadabra, right?
Yeah.
So you can both fill out the test, and the percentage of time you're going to pass. You'll have a varying degree of passing that test.
And those results can wildly change as well. If there is a major defining experience that you have, right? Positive or negative. You have a big, let's say you get married, right? This is a big event in a person's life. Well, that result of that test would wildly change if your ultimate priorities in life change. You have a child, you have a devastating loss in your life. Those things change how we see the world. And so it's not static, it changes.
Yeah. Yeah. But hearing from somebody, like foundational moments of the life of people that did great or not so great, like that doesn't change. Those things remain constant. Hearing is important. So, we touched on behaviors. You've done TEDx stuff. We talked in the pre-show. I say TEDx stuff like it's just this stuff, right? Like stuff like I'm like Jeff's drinking water. TEDx, very, very big path to get there. They don't just let anybody, but you talked in the pre-show about neurodiversity, which piqued my interest.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things that I hear that and I'm like, okay, tell me more. So tell me more about the neurodiversity stuff you've been researching and that you're talking on. Let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah. So two things as a prerequisite before just to finish a thought that I had when you were saying that about our last conversation around leadership. One of my absolute all-time favorite quotes is a quote from Dale Carnegie where he says that people will always support a world that they help create. And that to me is one of the most powerful quotes that I've had as a leader, as a team member, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as a member of my community, is that people will always support a world they help create. So if it's my idea and I push that idea on a team, on someone that I report to or reports to me, or my kids, I know my daughter participates better in the things that I want to see her do in the ways that I want to see her develop if she feels like she has a voice in the conversation and a seat at the table. And when we don't, you think about rebellious kids. The time I rebelled the most is when I felt like that I didn't have any control. I didn't feel like I was being heard. I didn't feel like I was being considered. So that's kind of a, just thought I would share that.
Yeah.
And the other thing when you said
100% on point.
Yeah. When you said the thing about TEDx, like it's just doing a thing, it's kind of like you drinking water. Well, the first thing that came to my mind is try not doing that for 4 days. Try not drinking any water for 4 days and see how important it is. You know what I mean? Like this, and that's a good metaphor, I think, for how I got into this TEDx thing. It wasn't because I was some life-changing, compelling speaker. It was because I sent one tweet to one person one time, and then that thing snowballed. And I wrote hundreds of small blog posts over the course of 6 years. And then there was an article that came out in Furniture Today, and a picture of Mark Kinsley giving a presentation about how we should stop advertising on social media and start communicating with people on social media. I took a picture of that Furniture Today article. I posted on Twitter. I at Mark Kinsley, and I said, I love this, and our industry needs more of it. That was my first ever interaction with Kinsley, and he tweeted me back and said, thank you. Apparently he went to my profile. He saw that at that time I had an industry blog that I was the only one that was reading it. I mean, like literally I would average 6 to 7 views a month on this thing. But I saw it as, this is my development. I'm willing to do the work long-term. It's like people talk about the Beatles, where it took them, 15 years to become an overnight success. Go ahead.
I mean, isn't it interesting,
there it is.
Like I related TEDx to drinking water, like it was just easy because I know it's not, right? Like I knew there was that 6-year story behind it because that's just the way it goes, doing the work, a lot of my other guests, we talk about that a lot because we kind of a lot of my prior guests, we run together in a similar mentorship group, but or in the same mentorship group. But I mean, the commonality of being consistent is so important behaviorally. I want to get into the neurodiversity aspect of things, but on this topic, I say often that people confuse constancy and consistency with this as the same word, and I look at them as two very different words. Right. And the example I use is, Doug, to use you as the person in the example, Doug consistently is happy because he constantly chooses things in his day to make him happy. Right. And that consistency, that's the way I look at the words. I know the dictionary kind of intermeshes them. Yeah. I know society at large does, but I think when you take that in, it now begins to guide doing the work. Yeah. Right. So I'm going to consistently tweet whatever media you need to use. I'm going to consistently use it, because that constancy of posting daily, once a week, whatever the path is, doesn't matter. But it's that consistency to say, I'm going to do it. And then always looking for something to add value over and over and over.
Yeah.
Is so important. And that's the definition of, to me, of doing the work.
Yeah. I mean, I think about the thing that led to me having the privilege to stand on that like iconic red dot at TEDx was, it wasn't anything that I did that was insurmountable. It was small things that I did over the course of, damn near a decade that I just did and I did and I did and I did. And it led me to this one thing that I think about a lot, I revisit a lot, and I teach when I bring a team member or when I'm mentoring someone. Is the mantra is, I will do the right thing for the right reason. I will expect the right result with no attachment to timing. And so what we do a lot is we try to say, if I do this, then I'll get this at this point. And we don't get to control the timing. But what I know is, if I do the right thing and I have the right motive, right thing, right reason, I can have an expectation of positivity that there will be the right result. It might not be the result that I planned. It might not be the result that I expect, but I will get the best possible result. And it'll be better than if I didn't do it for the right thing and I didn't do it for the right reason, right? I'm playing the odds. And I can have no attachment ever to the timing of those things. And, for me, I was really fortunate. And it reminds me of this Chinese proverb that goes, the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. And the next best time to plant a tree is today. Right. And, do the work over time. Good things happen.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's, and unfortunately our society today is all, it's all sizzle, no steak, right? It's all flash. It's all instant gratification. And, I'm sure you get them in your DMs. I get them, how'd you do that? What's that one thing? Well, that, for me, that one thing is 10 years of hard work.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, Jeff, man, I'm so happy that that's our culture. I'm so pleased that that's our culture. That is mostly sizzle with no steak. Yeah. Because separates, right? It's shooting fish in a barrel, man. Like, could you imagine if every single person lived this, I'll do the right thing for the right reason, I'll expect the right result. Do you realize how much more competitive and hard our world would be? Like for people to be successful? Like, once you understand that all you have to do is consistently evaluate, edit, iterate, and keep going, good things happen, So I'm super thrilled that, there's a percentage of the millennial population that goes, oh, well, all I have to do is buy this $500 social media course, post on TikTok 7 times a day, and then I'm gonna be able to, sell my I'll be an influencer and I'll make $1 million a year. Like, man, Hakuna Matata. It's great. Yeah. And I think, Jeff, I got that from my grandfather, who would get excited when he saw a recession coming, because what he would say is a lot of the people that aren't good enough to be here will go away, and it'll leave the best of us. And then I can compete with the best. Yeah.
I mean, we just on that note, we just in the decision yesterday in the store, we went like all Inception, down 7 levels there. In the store, the conversation I had with Ben yesterday, and we decided not to go forward with it, but we did in another avenue, was prepay an entire year's worth of advertising for a severe discount.
Nice.
Because we know what's coming. We know we're looking at some headwinds.
Yep.
And I know that our competition is going to pull back. Meanwhile, we bought up frequency, size, placement, and at a discount, because we're in a position to stroke the check because of all that work prior. So it's really, I'll sum up this section. I've had a screensaver on my phone for a while. Success is the hard work you're avoiding.
Yeah, I love that.
It's as simple as that. You are avoiding it. No one else.
Yep.
No one else has. There is no magic course.
Mm-hmm. No,
It's
no.
just the hard work.
Right. Right.
So we touched on it, started down on the road. So let's talk about neurodiversity, and then I want to talk about your boat before we wrap up.
Okay. All right.
There's no structure here.
That's good. That works better for my. Speaking of neurodiversity, that works better for me, anyways. So diversity, equity, inclusion is something that has been a passion for me for a long time. I've had the privilege to be in that space quite a bit, and I've always had eyebrows have been raised because it's not common that you see someone like me that is so passionate and active in the diversity inclusion space. It's not often that you see a straight white American male that lives in America that there's plenty of that profile that care. There's no question. There's plenty of that profile that give, but rarely do you see someone facilitating conversation like me. And that happened because I had a real blessing to have an experience as a young person that helped me to see two different worlds clearly, and it really created a passion. I grew up in a very small town where everyone around me looked the same, believed similarly, voted similarly, and did similar types of work. I don't look at that as a negative thing. It's what my reality was, there was also an air of superiority a lot of times, as I remember. There was a attitude of looking down on other people groups, other cultures. I had one African American person in my entire school when I was growing up, and when I was 13 years old, I was a pretty good basketball player, and I got recruited to play some really high level competitive AAU basketball in a different town. It was about an hour and a half ish away. It was I grew up in a town called Sanford, North Carolina, and I got recruited to play AAU in Greensboro, North Carolina. So as Caucasian as Sanford was, it was equally African American in Greensboro, and so I went from having one black kid in my school to being the only white boy on the bus, right? And I got to see the difference between the two cultures, and I can remember being incredibly uncomfortable in the very beginning, because I didn't understand the cadence or the culture that I was sort of thrust into. And I can remember, man, these guys were relentless in terms of the way they talked to me. They picked on me. They were rougher, I felt like, with me. And I can remember having this conversation with my cousin, who was 5.5 years older than me and a very good basketball player in his own right. I remember saying to him, like, man, I don't understand what's happening. Like, I'm getting beat to death. I feel isolated. I feel like these guys are just mean to me. And I can remember him sort of laughing at me and going like, bro, they're not being mean. They're making sure that you're sturdy enough to be trusted. And so go back next week and show them that you're tough enough to be a part of what they have going on. And sure enough, man, I went back and I realized that the reason they were roasting me so relentlessly is to test my fortitude, and so these guys overlooked the let's say prejudice that I had marinated in as a kid. They overlooked the ignorance I had for their culture. They were gracious in terms of the way that they included me in that particular group, and it really changed my life. It absolutely changed my life and helped me to see that, and I'll say the other thing is I felt the safest in that community. And in a lot of ways, I still feel safer in those types of communities. You know, I can remember thinking like, man, if something bad happens, these 12 guys aren't going anywhere. Like, we're in it together.
Right.
And
they've got your back.
100%. But I could remember thinking like, if I'm at home and I'm in the same, you know, my friend group at home, it's every man for himself,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And that's not a knock on, you know, my town. Like I owe a great debt to being able to have those extreme experiences. And it really, and then, you know, I go to college, I stay a part of being adopted into that culture. I go to college, graduate from college, and I realized something about 18 months out of college is that I had a particular privilege to, you know, grow my hair out, throw on a button-up shirt and some Sperry's, and go be white in the world. And there were differences. You know, there were absolute differences between me and some of my best friends and the start that I got versus some of them. And I became more and more passionate about equity, about diversity, about complete inclusion. And then when I started working on myself, I noticed, and this really sort of surfaced when I first got married. I realized, you know, like I mentioned, I would shut down. I would, you know, have these like really these high peaks and valleys emotionally. My body in a lot of ways, when I was a retailer, was breaking down. I would go through these long bouts of depression, even worse than what I had previously through high school and college, which I struggled with, a lot of anxiety. And I started therapy, and I had some diagnosis before, but then I received some more and started to really understand myself and realize that, in a lot of ways, some perhaps genetic, and then definitely some that were trauma induced, some things that I had to overcome. And so, like, as an example, like I was diagnosed at a pretty early age with like ADHD, dyslexia. As in high school, I was diagnosed with a sort of a strange form of narcolepsy, which was a trauma response. So it's like fight, flight, or freeze. The freeze was like I would just almost immediately go to sleep. Like it was my brain's way of going, I can't deal with this thing that is impacting me. And so I would literally sit back and I would fall asleep. And, you know, since then I was diagnosed with bipolar type 2 and a sort of a rider for ADHD, which is called RSD, which is called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And that's sort of where my love for conflict came from, because it was really the only way that I could earn the right, prove to myself that this is something that I can impact. And it's not a quote death sentence, right? It's not, I'm not the victim of this. I'm not the hero of this. I have an ability to respond to these things. And some is awareness, some is journaling, some is therapy, some is medical intervention. And I've realized that diversity isn't just about culture, nationality, orientation. And a lot of times one of the diversity topics that gets overlooked is neurodiversity. You know, that's so from an identification standpoint, that's things like, you know, dyslexia, that's things like autism, that's things like Down syndrome, that's things like ADHD, that's things like bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and really any kind of like cognitive, developmental, primarily cognitive disorder that's either genetic, trauma induced, or for some other reason. And so I've done a lot of work in that area as a way to help not only people that struggle with those sorts of things and deal with those sorts of things, how to accept that, how to talk about it, how to share with your, you know, if you have a disorder. I've got a good example is I had a review with a leader, with my manager once, like a year-end review sort of a thing. Right. And they said, you know, one of the one thing that I would like to see improved is, you let a lot of things kind of fall through the cracks. Like sometimes you don't get to emails as quickly as you should. Sometimes, it's the small things, the small details you have a hard time with. I'd like to see you improve on that. And because I had done the work and I knew myself well enough, my response was, you're right. I do. And that is likely not something that's going to improve.
Right.
And I will commit that I will do my best to only let the things that slip through the cracks will be the things that are small enough to slip through cracks. Right? I'm not going to miss the big things, but there's going to be things like that's going to happen, and I'm doing the best I can. And then describing and being transparent about, hey, look, this is something that I work on. This is something that
this is why these things happen.
It's a part of who I am, right? And there's shadow and sunlight when it comes to those things. Like as an example, dyslexia is a good example. So my reading comprehension, I'm going to be 39 this year in December. My reading comprehension right now is somewhere on a 5th or 6th grade level. So if I read something and I need to recall it, that also sort of cascades over into my ability to spell, my grammar. That's why if you open my book, it'll say, in the appreciation, the very front, I dedicate it to my kids and my wife. And then I say, all grammatical errors, all spelling and grammatical errors are compliments of dyslexia, right? Because it's a part of who I am, So that's the shadow, right? The shadow of my dyslexia is I'm going to have some misspellings. I'm not going to be able to be perfect in my grammar. And if you send me a long email, I likely will either not respond or not understand it.
Right.
But the sunlight to that shadow, the other side of it, it means that I have a talent and a propensity to be a better storyteller, to be able to communicate verbally at a higher level, to be able to retain, recall, and remember audible information that comes in a way that most people aren't able to. Right. And so recognizing what is the shadow of this thing that I struggle with, what is the sunlight, right? It's like people have gone through some really tough times, right? Really traumatic events. And I've got a few that I could easily recall. But the question is like, okay, this happened. It was terrible. It was awful. The shadow is, man, I suffered through this. I had pain. Maybe it caused me to suffer, to participate in some sort of addictive behavior, which is something that I've struggled with as well. But what's the sunlight on the other side of that? Well, I have a deeper understanding of what it means to hurt. I have a deeper understanding for perhaps how I can support someone that has been hurt or is hurting. I have more empathy. I'm more compassionate, right? And it's one of the things, man, I talk about in my book is like the people that hurt us, the people that hurt us can be our best teachers if we let them, right? They abandon us. Well, we can learn self-reliance. They marginalize us. We can learn self-care, right? And on and on and on. Well,
I think you're going to love, so we have to kind of wrap up because I've got a great producer. I think you can tell that. We're very organized here. Chris from Cast Ahead does a fantastic job. Chris is living his own big ticket life, supporting his family. He's got something he needs to do today. So I don't want to abruptly cut it short, but we will pick back up on this because I'm going to kind of drop something forthcoming. And I think, Doug, you're going to love. So part of, and I think if you're looking for a mentor, you should always ask the question, how are you being mentored of the person you're looking to mentor you? Because it's, they should be being mentored and being guided. One of the ways I'm guided is through Apex, one of the largest network masterminds out there. Within that group, I'm bringing forward Robert Nelson, who is a fantastic guy. He was one of the first guys on the streets for Obama's Brothers Keepers program, going back about 10 years. And him and I are going to kind of highlight the successes of people in Apex who have achieved success despite being told they can't, despite having lived experiences you nor I haven't had. And we're going to highlight what they've done, because my commitment, the box I want to create for people to stand on, especially kids in our schools today, is that they can achieve. And here are examples of people like them, the same struggles they've had. So with that said, I'll probably circle back to having you be a part of that, because I didn't even really know what you meant by neurodiversity. It just really piqued it. It went down on my little note list that we checked the box to talk about, and I'm glad we did, because I mean, man, that understanding the shadow people deal with, why can't you read a long email? I can read a long email. Well, like right. Doug doesn't not want to read a long email. It's a problem.
Right. And
you found a way to work through it. So I'll invite you back. I'll invite you in to be a part of that, because I think it's important. And
I love that.
You're going to bring a unique experience to it too. So we're still kind of gelling out the format and where it's going to go, but it's going to happen. I've just vocalized it. So it'll happen. And that's that. And we'll get to talk about all the other cool stuff you do, your boat, finding the balance of, how you said you're ruthlessly bad at vacations. We'll talk about that too. But man, this has been just a pleasure. It's like been so fun to bring you on the show and hear what you have to say. I hope our listeners have loved it. And man, this was an honor. So thanks for being on the show and taking the time today. Really appreciate you, Doug.
Feelings mutual, man. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. All right. Hey, thanks for tuning into the show, and we'll see you next week on the Big Ticket Life. Get ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. You either make excuses or you choose to level up. What amazing guests living the big ticket life. Woo! Woo! Brandon Brittingham.
Appreciate you having me here today, man.
It's that kind of discernment, that kind of focus, that kind of forward thinking that's so important if you're going to succeed in business today.
Jeff and I are like friends. We're real friends.
We are and so you unlock fortune and freedom without all the stress that normally comes along with it.
It all comes down to your why. Your business, why are you doing it? How is it going to change the world, and what's it going to do for your family?
I want you to celebrate your success.
Talk about the struggle. But I promise you, the story is in your struggle.
They'll never be able to say that about me, because people only see me working hard in anything that I'm doing whenever they see me
focused on your success and the success of those around you.
But being that constant in your community, good or bad, whether things are great in the community, bad in the community, who's steady?
Unapologetically do business and life on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. Amazing guests living the big ticket life. And we discuss how they do it and the big ticket methods they use. The things that make your life successful so you do life and business on your terms.
In and of itself, the only limitations that we really have on ourselves is the ones that we allow to be put on ourselves. And most people don't look at it in that perspective.
There's nothing wrong with being humble, but there's also nothing wrong with stepping into your superpower and letting people know who you are.
Get ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life.